Welcome to AgencyGate. We'll start off today by logging into the AgencyGate portal as a producer. Now, as a producer, we have access to create new policies. We can look and review and potentially edit policies that are currently in work in process. And we can also view policies that have already been complete. We can go here to reprint those policies as well. We have a very simple dashboard with some policy history, but as a demo system, there's very few policies that are here, so there's not much to show from an analytics standpoint. Let's go, first of all, let's start to work on a new policy. We're going to do one pretty much from scratch. So we're going to do a very simple renovation policy. And we'll give it an effective date. And we will move forward to forms. Now, based upon the policy that was selected in the lines of business, there's a number of forms that are required for this policy. You'll see that these are already pre-checked. You'll see also that forms are organized here on the left-hand side by line of business. So we can go expand any line of business and choose additional forms as we so see fit. And we can also go and head and search for specific forms. So if we wanted to search for all forms that are related to terrorism, you'd see here, there's our common forms. We have no property forms, there's no renovation forms. So we could choose any of these and add those to the policy package. We're just going to opt to choose these and leave these as defaults for now. Lastly, any forms that have a small pencil icon next to them indicate that those forms have fields that are enterable, that are capturable, that they can be populated either manually or captured from an admin system and populated on the form. We'll go ahead and leave these as is for now, and we're going to move forward into an interactive state. So interactive, we're presented with a user experience where we have a copy of the form on the right. In this case, it's the common policy deck, and some data capture fields on the left-hand side. And you'll notice that I very easily can go ahead and add simple data here. And you notice that gets populated on the right-hand side as I go ahead and type through. So here's the fields that I had just added, and they go directly to the deck. I also have the ability to add and remove any number of coverages here. So we're going to call this a sample coverage. Total premium will be, let's say that's $8,000. And let's go ahead and add a couple fees. So we're going to go ahead and add a company fee of $250. We're going to go ahead and add a simple fee of $200. And we'll go lastly add a flat fee of $150. And as I do this, you'll notice that on the right-hand side, these all get added as I go type these in. So very simple. I'm not going to bother filling out the rest of this deck page because it's just a sample. At any point in time, we can go ahead and proof this just to see what the entire policy package looks like with the data that we've just captured. So we're sending this off to GhostDraft. And GhostDraft is going to render a PDF of this particular policy package with all the data that has been captured. You can see this on the right-hand side. In addition, on the left, you see I have all of the forms that are included as part of the policy package. Notably, the schedule of forms and endorsements, being a required field, was automatically added, and the forms that were selected, that were pre-selected, are automatically populated on the schedule. In this simple interface, we can also see all of these forms. We can see thumbnails as well. So we can very easily go scan through these and then determine which form that we'd like to see. We'll go ahead and close our proof. One last thing I'd like to note out is that if there are any required fields, those can be indicated up here on the left-hand side. So you can create your library in a way that fields are required and fields are optional. From here, I can navigate forward to any form that I'd like, as I so choose. We're going to go ahead and jump all the way down to the renovation deck, being a renovation policy. So if I click on the renovation deck, I've got that available to me here now. You'll notice that there is an area for rich text for the additional notes. So in addition to having very simple, straightforward field capturability, alphanumeric fields and currencies and dates and so forth, we also have the ability to capture rich text. So for example, I can do this, and I might want to bold let's see, I'm going to go ahead and bold this here, and I'm going to bold our dollar amount so that they stand out on the additional notes. So you could do all sorts of other things here as well. You can create a table, you can align, you can use bullets, you can use numeric bullets, just regular bullets, and so forth. So a very simple ability. This is a very useful feature for creating manuscript endorsements. So, and just to show you this, let's go ahead and proof this once again, so we can go take a look at our renovation deck in PDF format once it's completed. So here's a renovation deck. You notice that all of the items that I had bolded, that I had pulled in, very simple to add rich text in this particular field. So from here, we can go ahead and save, or we can save and exit, or I could complete. So we're going to go ahead and save and exit this back into a work in process. So we're going to save it there for later. So we're going to go create another new policy. In fact, we'll look at work in process first. You can see here's the policy that we just created. So let's go back into, let's do a little bit more complicated example. So rather than just creating a manual policy, we're going to pull data in from an admin system. So I've got a few files that I staged from an admin system here. We're going to open these up and we're going to import. As we import these, the data from the admin system is already pre-populates our policy detail. So you can see that we have a policy number here. This is a building under renovation policy, at least the description. Effective date of June 13, 2023. I move forward to forms. Some of these forms are required forms. Some of these forms were already pre-checked by the admin system itself. We're not going to bother to add or change any of this. We're just going to go ahead and get into interactive. Now, as we get into interactive, you see that all of the data that we had captured from the admin system populates forward into the common policy deck and populates all of the other forms as well. So we can review this. Let's say this is not a correct address. We're going to call this Drive, 50 Skyline Drive. So we're going to make a change to that. Effective dates, of course, those are correct. Let's say we missed a previous policy number, 39567. So we'll say that's our previous policy number. We'll make sure we populate that. And you'll see that it's all updated on the right-hand side of the deck page. We'll go ahead and proof this, get a copy of the entire policy package as a proof, like we'd shown before, just as we see here. Schedule of forms and endorsements, just as before, is already pre-populated. Certificate is there. Renovation deck, as we had seen here before, there were no additional notes on the renovation deck, but we do have our coverages and our deductibles already populated from the admin system. Very simple, very straightforward. As before, we can navigate forward and backward to any one of these forms, or we can say, look, we just needed to make some simple changes to the common policy deck. We can go ahead and complete this policy, which we're going to do now. So we'll issue a complete. And we're going to do two things. We're going to have a PDF of the completed policy produced. We're also going to produce an XML of that completed policy. In addition, behind the scenes, we're automatically going to archive a copy of that policy for reprints later on. So we'll go ahead and hit complete. So AgencyGate behind the scenes is going to go ahead and create a copy of the policy and produce it. And as you see here, we've got a XML file that was downloaded to us. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look at that. Here's data that was captured and produced. We have all the forms that were captured. We have all the data that was captured from the admin system. So this can be used to push back into the admin system or sent to the carrier for a copy of all of the policy data. And of course, you've got a copy of the PDF here for distribution, for print, for download, anything that you need to do with a copy of that policy. So if we go into archive, you notice that that policy is here, that building under renovation, there's a copy of that same policy. So we could do the same thing here. So we could have printed that policy PDF, or we could have exported that policy. Most notably, when we save a policy to archive, that's actually done in PDF-A, which is distinctly different from PDF, a bit more portable. So that shows a very simple, straightforward way of working with policy data from an admin system directly into Issuance, directly into AgencyGate, and then all the way to complete. So a couple other things I'd like to note here before we move on to a few other features is when we're looking at work in process, I'm profiled as a producer. I'm an admin or a super user for the producer. So I have an ability to show work in process across the entire organization. So right now I'm just seeing my quote work in process items. But if I go turn this off, I can see work in process items across all the other producers that I'm working with. So when I go assign these producers here, this list of producers, I see all of their policies when I can show all web, or I can disable that and only see mine. So I have an ability to preview and prove. That's because I'm a super user, a super admin for the producer. So we show that as well. We can search any of these items in the WIP queue as well. So if I wanted to go look for, say, renovation, you can see there's my renovation policy. Or if I look for townhome, you see that as well. And that's also applicable across all policies. So if I want to search for condo, so if I look across all the producers of company-wide producers policies, you see that here. As I turn that off, there's no condo association policy that is just considered to be mine. I'm not working any of those right now. So a very rich filtering capability, very simple, very quick. So that way, any policies that are partially complete, we can go find them very easily. Our searching also works by policy number as well. We go back and look at archive. Archive also has the same searching capabilities, albeit different, just slightly different. So if I look for policies that are effectively condo policies, you'll see that those are here. If I go for, I don't know if we have anything that are townhome here. We'll go take a look. We don't have anything that are townhome. Let's look at warehouse. We may only have just one or two of those. We actually have two policies that are restaurant warehouse. So we can go, these are done a few years ago, or at least have effective dates from a few years ago. So simple enough. So very rich, easy, simple capabilities of accessing policies that are already complete or accessing policies that are not complete. So very simple, easy way of finding, filtering, searching, retrieving, reprinting, whichever you choose to do. So we're going to shift gears here now, and we're going to show you a few things behind the scenes. So there's also very rich capabilities for integration with AgencyGate. So if we go look at our a UI for the interface, the APIs, or the web services that AgencyGate exposes, you see that we have a large handful of those for working with an agency level, working with analytics, so data about completed policies, the archive itself, working with companies, composition RPI, which is working with interactive, a full suite of library APIs, so you can interrogate, work with the library and all sorts of different levels. Publishing API, where you can produce, that's really producing print. And then a rich set of transaction APIs, which is really work in process. And then we have a transport API, which is our ability to take data from any admin system, normalize it, and bring it into AgencyGate. And that's what the transport API does. So let's go ahead and actually work with a few of these in real life. So I'm going to use an application called Postman. And I've staged a few simple requests for Postman so we can illustrate how this works. So before I do anything, I have to go ahead and submit an authorization request to AgencyGate. And that way that I use a token for all subsequent requests that I'm going to show in this demonstration. So we're going to go ahead and send off an authorization request, and we're going to get back a token. I'm going to have to take this token. I'm going to go ahead and copy it. I'm going to go up to my collection up here. I'm going to save the token at the collection level. And we're going to go ahead and save that. Okay. So now that we've done that, we can do a few things here. So now that we have authorization already done and out of the way, we can go review. We can go look at some of these services. So let's start very firstly by going and looking at work in process. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of. We actually have some query information here. We'll leave this, but we'll leave this now. I should also note that when you're working with work in process and you're working with archive at an API level, they support full OData query methods. So filtering, ordering, buying, counting, and so forth. So there's all the standard OData query methods are available through AgencyGate. So we're going to use a couple of these today. We're going to return a count. We're going to also order all the results by modify time. So we're going to go ahead and send this off. And by the way, I'm doing a search for this particular user ID. If we omit that user ID, we can get results back for all users. So if you'll see here, these are the items that are currently in work in process. So you can see the last item that I had performed, which was that simple renovation policy, the manual policy that I produced. So that's currently in work in process. So I was able to go ahead and get my list of work in process items back, and you'll see that that's sitting here, and everything was ordered by modify time. If I go back to the user interface, that will be mirrored here as well. So if you go look at work in process, it logged me out. Let's log back in. And there it is. So that simple renovation policy, that was the last policy that was seen. You can see that it's down here. You notice that it's got a transaction ID. That's important because we can use that transaction ID to do interesting things like proofing. So let's go ahead and proof that particular transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. And I'm going to go ahead and proof this. Now, I'm not going to have a PDF try to render into Postman because that doesn't really work well. But I'm going to go ahead and send it and then download it. So what's going to happen is AgencyGate is going to send back a copy of the proof as a PDF. We're going to stage that into a proof folder. So we'll go ahead and save it here. Now, what I've got to do now is I need to go ahead and find that folder to show. So just give me a minute. And then here we are. So here's our demo folder, and we've got a proof. Let's go take a look at the proof. Here's our policy. This was a simple manual policy that we had created from hand by scratch. And then, so again, very easy to work with the API to go retrieve items from work in process. And there it is, a very simple way of doing that. There's the PDF that came back. Simple and easy. So we showed how to proof. We showed how to acquire a whip list. I can certainly filter this whip list. So if I go back and look at, for example, let's go back and see here. So I've got a few, let's search for townhome. So I can go up in here, let's go and we're going to do filter. And that's going to be this description. And this is going to contain townhome. Let's see if we can do this correctly. Go ahead and send that. And there it is. We only have one policy in work in process. It's a townhome policy, and there it is. So it's very easy for me to modify the API to go retrieve that one policy from work in process, or I guess the list from work in process. We also have a web service to go actually retrieve the data from work in process. I'm not going to bother to show that now, but we could go make this request and get all the data that was populating that actual policy document itself. I can go ahead and assign WIP. So if I take that particular transaction ID, which I copied before, and I'm going to assign this to one of my colleagues. That's assigned to him. So go ahead and send this. So I got a 200 back, which means it was successful. So let's go back and look at my dashboard. Let's go back into work in process. And you'll see that policy is gone. We only have this townhome policy. Let's go back over here. Let's assign that back to me as a user. And go ahead and send this off. Let's go back over here again. Let's refresh work in process. And you can see we brought that simple renovation policy back to my work in process queue. So very easy to do that. We already showed proofing. And we can also do a complete here as well. So actually, before we do that, let's actually import a policy. So we'll actually have a real policy to work with. I've set this up. I've got a sample policy file here. Let's go ahead and delete this. Let's just go get a new file from a local machine. Just Postman lets me do that. So I'm going to choose demo. I'm going to choose data. And let's go ahead and grab this particular policy file right here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and import that in. Okay. So we got a response back. We've got all of our policy detail. This is the response back from the system. It shows us all the forms that were part of the package and so forth. And if I go over to my work in process queue, let's go back to the dashboard, work in process, and you'll see we have a new policy here called condo association. Let's go back up again. Let's go look at the WIP list. We're going to search for, we know that was called condo. We should be able to see it now. There it is, condo association. So that just came in. That was just imported directly in via the import, actually the transport API, which we had talked about before. So that's there. So we can go proof this as we did before. Let's go ahead and do that. Actually, what we need to do first is on the import, we need to make sure we grab the correct transaction ID. So there's the transaction ID. Let's go ahead and proof this. Go ahead and populate that there. As before, we're going to go ahead and send and download. GhostDraft is receiving this data, going to produce a PDF and return it back to us. Let's go put this in our proof folder. So we'll go ahead and save that there. And then let's go back in as we did before. So now we see have an additional file here. So it's a much larger, this actually has data from the admin system. So it's a much larger policy package. Let's go do a quick proof on this. And here we go. Full copy of the policy package. List of all the forms here, our schedule, cert. Let's see, what else do we have here? Thought we had a liability deck here. There's a liability deck. Close this. Again, fully populated policy package, rendered very quickly through AgencyGate, powered by GhostDraft. Simple enough. We'll go ahead and done. We're done with that. So now that we've done that, we can actually issue complete. We don't need to work with AgencyGate at all. So if we have all the policy data, we can import it directly to work in process. There's an option to use it. AgencyGate is interactive, or if you know that everything is already populated correctly, very easy to go ahead and issue a complete. So we're going to take that same transaction ID. We're going to go ahead and issue a complete request here. And then we're going to send a download. So what this is going to do is going to produce a file copy PDF of the policy, and it's going to save it to archive. So as before, we can save the proof here. We're not going to bother to do that right now because we've already seen it. But if we go back over here to archive, you'll see we have this final policy just was completed. So we just produced this. If I go ahead and print this, we're printing it directly out of archive now. Again, this is what we just had seen on the screen before. So very simple to run a complete on a policy with the AgencyGate API. So you can produce policies end to end and optionally use AgencyGate for any data capture if you see fit. However, you have full work in process capabilities available via the API, and then you have full printing capabilities as well. We can print from archive if we wanted to. We won't bother to do that. We can export from archive. Wouldn't necessarily bother to do that. Let's go ahead and look at the archive list. So we're just going to not do this. Actually, archive date greater than 2024-04-01. Let's do everything that was archived today. So let's go ahead and send this off. So again, we just had a couple policies that we completed. So we've got the condo association and the building under rental, those two policies that we just did. So we're going to take the archive ID for the condo association policy, and we can go ahead and export that from archive. So let's go ahead and use that archive ID and hit send here. And then here's all the policy data for that policy. This policy data represents what was captured from the admin system, what was updated through AgencyGate, and what was staged into archive. So we have all this rich policy information that is staged into archive that can be sent back to the carrier, can be used with the producer's admin system as well. Last but not least, we'll go ahead and do a print from archive just to prove that we can do it. Let's go ahead and hit publish. And of course, I made the mistake of not saving. So it's trying to render a PDF in Postman, which Postman doesn't really do a very good job of, but you get the idea. So we received, actually maybe we can do, let's do a send and download now. Let's try that again. And I think Postman may not like this because it's trying to render the copy of the PDF here within Postman. So it may not like trying to do this request at the same time. So we're not going to worry. We'll give this a second. If it doesn't come back and it's too busy, then we won't worry too much about it. But you already saw that we received a copy of the policy back here within Postman. So it's essentially a moot point. So we'll go ahead and move on. So that is AgencyGate. Again, back to the dashboard here. So as you can see, just to sum this up, you can do all this work through the UI. You have the ability to create policies, import data with policies. You have full access to work in process, full access to document archive. You have an ability to manage producers, agents within the office as well here. And then reprints with archive, viewing. If you're an admin, you have view work in process across all producers that you're profiled with. And then, of course, you have the ability to do all of the work behind the scenes via the AgencyGate API, which, of course, is shown here. So, and that wraps it up. Thank you for joining.